A sloth, a donkey, and a curious human. Send a prompt and see what they're doing. One hits record with a question on his mind. Two brothers pick it up, see what they find. Corn takes his time, Herman's got the facts. Back and forth, they never hold back. My weird prompts, come on in, that's where we begin. My weird prompts, glad you're here.
This episode was generated using artificial intelligence. Please verify facts.
Hey Herman and Corn. So I'd love to pick your brains on not just products as we sometimes do, but actually workflow and components that our listeners may already have, like me, just lying around the place, and trying to think about ways to be clever in using what we have for the following purpose. So you guys might know me as the voice behind my word prompts. I'm the human part of this collaboration. So I record voice prompts throughout the day. And the idea of this podcast is pretty much to record those random questions that we probably all have bouncing around in our neurons, and we send them into AI tools. And I frequently just, I guess for a couple of years, got these really interesting responses. And I've had this idea for a while before we actually finally got going with the podcast. Why don't I just make a podcast out of it? Like, I'll record my prompts, AI will respond, and that's pretty much the format here. So the voice is, I'm a real human. Some person actually thinks I'm a bot, which I think is the funniest thing in the world. But I'm 100% bona fide. I'm sitting here with human-like problems like acid reflux. But I then send it to you, and then it's text-to-speech. My idea for this podcast was, because I wanted it to be spontaneous, I've tried to lean into the idea of recording where I can and with whatever I have, which is why most of my prompts, certainly the last few 100 episodes we've done, have been recorded on my phone. And I'm using, a OnePlus Android. It's nothing ultra fancy, but it definitely gets the job done, and the audio is, I think, at least decent enough. The challenge I have is basically recording a lot of these from home. We have our 8-month-old son, Ezra, and he's often fussing. In some prompts, you can hear him faintly in the background. And I deliberately, if he's really loud, I'll do a retake. But if it's just kind of there, I'll leave it go. But ideally, I wouldn't really like to have those in the recordings. Now, the challenge is when you are recording prompts like these from, let's say, where I am currently, which is a relative's house. So I don't have my desktop. I have to use my phone. And everything, I have a friend who's a sound engineer, and he's got a fantastic studio with beautiful wall-treated panels and all the rest of it. And it's a pleasure to record in an environment like that, acoustically treated. But as a long-term renter, we're going into our 10th year of renting. I've never felt A, it was possible to properly acoustically treat a room, and B, based on the pattern of our renting so far, where the landlord can just end the contract randomly, I've never thought it was worthwhile doing that, because you're going to have to just rip everything down, and you're going to have to buy different foam. It just seemed like not something I wanted to do until we actually owned a place. So I've looked into instead makeshift solutions. Now, I'm actually using something that I have to recommend to others, but also ask your advice. I was going to say I don't know the product number, but it's literally staring me in the face. TT88, there we go. It's a Ulanzi mount that's actually intended as kind of an overhead selfie stick. And I got this for doing video calls with my family when we had Ezra. I realized that your hands become your most valuable commodity as a parent when you're holding, when you're trying to hold up a pacifier or a bottle or Ezra. So this is, it's an ingenious device. I'm a huge fan of Ulanzi's products. They're on AliExpress and Amazon. And no, this isn't a affiliate plug. I just happen to have found a few other products like really well thought out. So it has like a little it's a tripod at the base, but it extends up to a solid like 2 meters, and it's got a phone caddy at the top. So I'm using it as a makeshift microphone stand. It's sitting on a bed. My phone's positioned vertically in the stand, based on where I discovered it's actually the best address pattern, and it kind of works. But this definitely wasn't purchased for this, but it's the only thing that's a bit shaky. So my questions, Herman and Corn, for those of us who are recording from home, whether we are recording, let's say, voiceover or YouTube voiceovers, voice acting even, or just doing something like this, a podcast, and we're trying to get the best audio quality for our listeners, but we don't have maybe the luxury of, we might be on the road, or we might be staying in a sublet, so we don't have a proper studio. A couple of things I found. I'll just to kind of maybe preface the conversation with the stuff I've looked into already. One option is these kind of sound isolation booth. So these are products that will literally screw into a microphone stand, and they create like this little wrap of acoustic foam around the microphone, and they'll often have a little thread there for a pop filter to go into. They're kind of ridiculous looking, but the idea is that they'll mimic a little portable sound booth to reduce reverb. I don't know if there's going to be a lot of reverb in this room, but most Israeli rooms are horrible for acoustics out of the box, because we tend to use marble floors and hard walls, and it's just a perfect setup for reverb. So it's intended, and I haven't tried it out much, but the few times I've been, and probably the reason for that is it's a clunky piece of gear. It doesn't really fold down very well, and it's just kind of messy. So I've tried a few before after trials with it, and I think it does help, but because it's kind of unwieldy, it's not something in practice that I found much. I've often said I should probably just get rid of this thing. Another option is I have like a foam, it's kind of like wraps around whatever you're recording into a microphone. It's hard to describe. It's like a foam cube. It again is kind of comical looking, and that's a thing. I'm also wondering if there's any fold down microphone stands that actually are intended to be used for this purpose, because you definitely want a little bit of rigidity, and maybe ones that are actually built for recording into a phone. The other question, Herman and Corn, is for those who are recording with their phones and want to get better audio quality. To use an external microphone seems like a good way to do it. I've actually never, as someone who doesn't spend a lot of time on my Android, generally speaking, I haven't tried using the USB-C port for anything except charging. And I'm wondering, can you actually connect? Are there any USB Type-C microphones that will plug into your phone and be recognized as an external microphone, and you might get something significantly better? And finally, recording in the great outdoors, where you've got maybe more background noise again, you've got maybe wind, different challenges. I've used a microphone with a headset boom, but you look like a fool. So I've done that in like a park when I've had an idea for a prompt at nighttime and I happen to have it in my bag. But if you didn't want to look quite so foolish, there's also a lav mic, and you've got those headsets like the Poly 5200 that we talked about. So I'm just curious, Herman and Corn, for there's a lot of talk in the audio world about here's how to set up your perfect recording studio, and I think that's great. But the world of improv recording, recording with what you have where you are, but trying to get the best possible audio quality, I feel like doesn't get a lot of attention. So curious to get your takes on all of those topics in today's episode.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my weird prompts. I am Corn, and I am sitting here in our living room in Jerusalem with my brother. It is a bit of a grey Tuesday, March 5th, 2026, and the wind is whistling through the stone gaps in our apartment, but we are cozy and ready to dive into some listener questions.
Herman Poppleberry reporting for duty. It is great to be here for episode 932. We have been doing this for a long time, Corn, but the questions just keep getting more interesting as the technology evolves. I remember when we started, we were worried about basic bit rates, and now we are talking about neural processing and spatial audio on mobile devices.
They really do keep us on our toes. And today we have a prompt from our housemate Daniel. He has been experimenting with his recording setup lately, and he sent over some thoughts on how to get professional-grade audio when you are not in a professional-grade environment. He is basically asking for the ultimate mobile workflow for the spontaneous creator.
Which is basically the story of our lives, right? Even though we have our little setup here with the acoustic panels and the decent interfaces, we are often recording in rooms that were definitely not designed with acoustics in mind. Daniel mentioned he is recording a lot on his phone, specifically a OnePlus 13 Android device, and he is trying to navigate the challenges of spontaneous recording without losing that professional edge.
It is a great topic because spontaneity is the heart of this podcast. If you have to spend an hour setting up a studio, you lose the spark of the idea. The prompt just dies on the vine. But if the audio sounds like you're recording inside a tin can or a public restroom, people are going to turn it off within 30 seconds. Daniel mentioned using things like mobile mounts, specifically that Ulanzi TT88, and even those little portable sound booths.
I love that he brought up the Ulanzi mount. For those who do not know, Ulanzi makes some of the most practical gear for mobile creators. The TT88 is technically an overhead stand, designed for top-down shots of people drawing or unboxing things, but using it as a makeshift mic stand is brilliant. It gives you that height and stability you need so you are not just holding the phone in your hand. It has those 3 points of articulation that allow you to position the phone exactly at mouth level without it being in your line of sight if you are reading a script.
Right, because handling noise is a silent killer of audio quality. Every time your finger slides across the chassis of the phone, or even if you just shift your grip, it sounds like an earthquake to the microphone. The vibrations travel through the plastic and metal directly into the capsule. But Herman, let's talk about the environment first. Daniel mentioned recording in a relative's house or at home where his son, Ezra, might be making some noise in the background. He also pointed out that most Israeli homes are acoustic nightmares.
Oh, do not get me started on the marble floors and the Jerusalem stone walls. It is a classic Mediterranean problem. You have stone walls, high ceilings, and hard tile or marble floors. From a physics perspective, that is just a giant echo chamber. Sound waves hit those hard surfaces and bounce back almost instantly. This creates what we call slapback echo or high frequency reverb that makes your voice sound thin, distant, and frankly a bit amateur.
It is funny because people think they need a better microphone to fix that. They think, if I spend $500 on a new mic, the echo will go away. But a better microphone often makes it worse because it is more sensitive to those reflections. It captures the echo in even more detail.
A high-end condenser microphone in a room with marble floors will just capture the echo in high definition. You will hear every single bounce off the ceiling. The first step for anyone recording at home, like Daniel is doing, is to address the space before the gear. Daniel mentioned those sound isolation booths that screw into a stand. Those are interesting, but they only solve half the problem.
You mean the ones that look like a giant foam semicircle behind the mic? Like a little padded throne for the microphone?
Yes, they are designed to stop the sound of your voice from traveling past the mic and hitting the wall behind it. But the real issue in a room with hard floors is the sound bouncing off the floor and the ceiling and coming back into the front of the microphone. Those little booths do nothing for the reflections coming from the rest of the room. They can also create a boxy sound because they are so small that the sound waves bounce around inside the foam and create a muddy mid-range.
So what is the alternative for someone like Daniel, who is a long-term renter? He mentioned he does not want to glue acoustic foam to the walls because he might have to move, or the landlord might just end the contract. That is a very real reality here in Jerusalem. You cannot just go around modifying the masonry.
It is the renter's dilemma. My recommendation is always the soft goods approach. If you are recording on your phone and you have that Ulanzi stand, set it up on a bed or a sofa. Daniel said he is already doing some of this, recording on a bed. That is actually one of the best acoustic environments you can find in a normal house. A mattress is a giant, thick absorber of sound. It kills the reflections from the floor instantly.
I remember back in episode 598, we talked about audio engineering as a form of prompt engineering. If the input is clean, the AI processing later on has a much easier time. If you give an AI a recording full of room reverb, the noise reduction algorithms often end up making your voice sound robotic because they cannot distinguish the reverb from the actual vocal harmonics. They start cutting into the frequencies of your actual voice to try and get rid of the room.
That is a crucial point, Corn. People rely way too much on post-processing these days. They think, oh, I will just run this through an Adobe Podcast Enhance or a Descript tool and it will sound like a studio. But those tools work by guessing what your voice should sound like under the noise. They are generative models. The more noise and echo you have, the more the AI has to guess. And that is where you get those weird underwater artifacts or that lisping sound that makes you sound like a cyborg.
So, if you are Daniel and you are in a room with marble floors, maybe you throw a heavy rug down or even just a few thick blankets.
Blankets are the secret weapon of the mobile podcaster. If you can hang a moving blanket or a heavy duvet on a couple of cheap light stands or even over the back of some chairs, you are creating an acoustic cloud. It is much more effective than those tiny portable booths because it covers more surface area. If you can get a blanket behind you and a blanket in front of you, you have essentially created a vocal booth for $0.
Let's talk about the gear specifically. Daniel asked about using the USB-C port on his Android phone for external microphones. He said he has mostly just used it for charging. Herman, is that a viable path for high-quality mobile audio in 2026?
It is not just viable, it is the gold standard now. The internal microphones on modern smartphones, like the OnePlus 13 he mentioned, are actually surprisingly good. We talked about this in episode 682. They are designed for beamforming and noise cancellation during phone calls. But they are still tiny. They lack the physical surface area to capture a full frequency range. A dedicated USB-C microphone allows you to have a much larger diaphragm.
And a larger diaphragm means a better signal-to-noise ratio, right? More air hitting the sensor means less electronic hiss in the background.
Precisely. You get more of the warmth and the low-end frequencies of the human voice. There are some incredible options out there now. The Shure MV88 Plus is a classic choice for mobile users. It comes with a little tripod and connects directly to the USB-C port. What is great about it is that it has its own built-in digital signal processing. You can set the gain, the compression, and the equalization on the mic itself using an app, and then those settings stay on the mic no matter what app you use to record. It is like having a tiny sound engineer living inside the cable.
That sounds like a game changer for someone who wants to be spontaneous. You do not want to be fiddling with software levels every time you have an idea. You just want to plug in and know that the gain is set correctly so you don't clip the audio.
And for Daniel's specific situation, where he might be recording in different rooms, having a mic that can handle its own processing is huge. Another great option is the Rode Video Mic Me C Plus. It is tiny, it plugs directly into the port without a cable, and it is a directional microphone.
Directional is key here, isn't it? Especially with baby Ezra in the background. If the mic is only picking up what is in front of it, the baby playing in the corner becomes much less of an issue.
It is everything. The internal mic on a phone is usually omnidirectional or uses software to try and figure out where the sound is coming from. A cardioid or shotgun microphone, like that Rode one, focuses on what is right in front of it. It has what we call off-axis rejection. If Daniel points that mic directly at his mouth and has his back to the source of the noise, he is going to get a much cleaner recording. It is about using physics to your advantage.
You know, Daniel mentioned looking like a fool in the park with a headset boom. I think we have all been there. I once recorded an intro in a park in Tel Aviv and people thought I was talking to myself in a very intense way. But he also mentioned lavalier mics. I have always found those a bit tricky to get right. They always seem to rub against clothing and create that scratching sound.
Lavaliers are a double-edged sword. They are great because the mic is so close to the source, which is your mouth, so you can keep the gain low and ignore a lot of the room noise. But yes, clothing rustle is the enemy. If you are using a lavalier, you really have to be careful about your wardrobe. A cotton t-shirt is usually fine, but a synthetic jacket or a silk tie will sound like a forest fire every time you breathe. My tip for Daniel if he uses a lavalier is to use a bit of medical tape to secure the cable to his skin or the inside of the shirt so it doesn't move.
What about the digital sandwich? We talked about that in episode 868. For listeners who missed it, that is when you hold your phone horizontally right in front of your mouth, like you are about to take a bite out of a sandwich. Daniel is using a stand now, which is better, but is the digital sandwich still a good backup for those truly spontaneous moments?
It is a great backup because it uses the proximity effect. When you get a microphone very close to your mouth, the bass frequencies are naturally boosted. It makes your voice sound richer and more authoritative. But the danger is plosives. All those P&B sounds send a literal gust of air into the microphone. If you are doing the digital sandwich, you have to talk across the microphone, not directly into it. Aim your breath at the top edge of the phone, not at the mic holes.
That is a great tip. It is like how professional singers hold the mic slightly off axis. Now, Daniel also mentioned a foam cube. I think he's talking about those Chaotica eyeball clones. You know, the big round foam balls that go over the whole mic.
Those are actually quite effective for what they are. They create a little isolated environment for the microphone itself. If you are using a dedicated USB mic on a stand, putting one of those foam shields over it can really help with the room reflections we were talking about earlier. It is not a perfect solution, and it can make the audio sound a bit muffled if the foam is too thick, but if you are in a pinch and you cannot hang blankets everywhere, it is a solid middle ground.
I'm curious about the software side of things on Android. Daniel is using a OnePlus. Are there specific apps that he should be looking at to make sure he is getting the best raw data? I know some apps try to be too helpful and end up ruining the file.
That is a really important question. A lot of the default voice memo apps on phones apply a ton of compression and aggressive noise reduction automatically. They are designed for voice notes, not for high fidelity production. For a podcast, you want the rawest signal possible so you can process it later with better tools. I always recommend an app like Field Recorder or even the Dolby On app. Dolby On is actually fantastic for mobile creators because it does some really intelligent, non-destructive processing. It can help with that marble floor echo without making you sound like a robot. It also lets you export in lossless formats like WAV instead of compressed MP3.
And it is free, right?
It is. It is one of those rare tools that is actually professional grade and accessible. But even with the best app, you have to watch your input levels. Daniel mentioned the stand being a bit shaky. If the phone is vibrating or moving, that can create low-frequency hums that are hard to get out later. Even the wind from a ceiling fan can cause the stand to vibrate slightly.
So maybe he needs to weigh down the bass of that Ulanzi stand.
Definitely. A small sandbag or even just a heavy book placed on the base of the tripod can make a huge difference in stability. It stops those micro vibrations from the floor or the bed from reaching the microphone. If you are on a bed, the mattress absorbs most of it, but if you are on a desk, every time you tap the desk or move your mouse, that vibration goes straight up the stand.
I want to go back to the idea of spontaneous recording in the great outdoors. Daniel mentioned recording in a park. Wind is the big boss there. Even a slight breeze can ruin a recording by creating that low-end distortion that sounds like a jet engine.
Wind is the one thing you cannot fix in post-processing. Once a microphone diaphragm is hit by a gust of air, it clips the signal and that data is just gone. It is physically distorted. If Daniel is recording outside, he absolutely needs a dead cat.
A dead cat? For the listeners who are not audio nerds, please explain that we are not talking about actual felines. We are a pro-cat podcast.
Right. It is a fuzzy, hairy windscreen. The long synthetic hairs break up the wind before it can hit the microphone. It creates a pocket of still air around the capsule. If you see a professional film crew, they always have those big fuzzy covers on their boom mics. You can get tiny ones for smartphone mics or even little adhesive ones for the phone's internal mic. It looks a bit ridiculous, like you are talking into a small rodent, but it is the only way to get clean audio outside.
It is funny how much of this comes down to just accepting that you might look a little silly to get the best result. Whether it is talking into a foam cube or using a dead cat in the park, quality requires a bit of humility.
It really does. But honestly, in 2026, people are so used to seeing creators everywhere that nobody really cares. If I see someone in Independence Park with a fuzzy mic on their phone, I just assume they are a professional. I don't think they are weird, I think they are dedicated.
That is a good point. Now, Herman, let's think about the second order effects of this. If more people are recording spontaneously on high-quality mobile rigs, what does that do to the podcasting landscape? We have seen a shift away from the overly polished, studio-bound shows toward more authentic, on-the-ground content.
I think it is a great development. It democratizes the medium. You do not need a $5,000 setup in a basement to have a voice, but it also means the bar for entry is higher in terms of knowledge. You have to know how to manage your environment. If you are recording a high-stakes interview or a deep philosophical prompt like Daniel does, the audio quality becomes the bridge of trust between you and the listener. If the audio is bad, the listener has to work harder to hear you, and that creates cognitive load. They get tired of listening to you.
Cognitive load is exactly what we want to avoid. We want the ideas to flow directly into the listener's mind. Speaking of ideas, Daniel mentioned he is recording these prompts for an AI to respond to. Does the AI care about the audio quality as much as a human does? Or is it better at filtering out the noise?
That is a fascinating question. The current generation of speech-to-text models, like OpenAI's Whisper version 4, are incredibly robust. They can pull text out of some very noisy environments, even with music playing in the background. However, the nuance can get lost. If the AI is also analyzing tone, emotion, or subtle inflections, what we call prosody, then audio quality matters immensely. If your voice is distorted or muffled, the AI might miss the sarcasm, the hesitation, or the urgency in your prompt.
So, even if the AI can understand the words, it might miss the soul of the message if the recording is poor. It might give you a generic answer because it couldn't detect the emotional weight of the question.
It is like the difference between reading a transcript of a speech and hearing the speech itself. We want the AI to respond to the whole person, not just the dictionary definitions of the words they used. That is why Daniel's quest for better mobile audio is so important. He is building a better interface for his collaboration with the AI. He is ensuring that the prompt is delivered with all its original intent intact.
I really like how he is using what he has, too. That Ulanzi stand he bought for family video calls is now his podcasting rig. That kind of cross-functional use of gear is very much in the spirit of what we do here. It is about being clever with your resources.
It is the Poppleberry way. Use what you have, but use it intelligently. I think his idea of the makeshift sound booth is worth exploring further, though. If he is in a relative's house, he might not be able to hang blankets or move furniture. One thing I have seen work really well is the closet trick.
Ah, the classic. Every traveling podcaster's best friend. I have spent many hours in closets surrounded by winter coats.
It really is the gold standard of DIY audio. If you go into a closet full of clothes, you are in a near-perfect acoustic environment. The clothes act as massive sound absorbers, and the small space prevents long-range echoes. If Daniel can set up his Ulanzi stand on a shelf in a closet, he will get audio that rivals a professional studio. It is cramped, and you might feel a bit like a secret agent, but the results are undeniable. Just make sure you aren't bumping into the hangers.
I have definitely done that in hotels before. It works every time. But what if you were in an open concept house? A lot of modern Israeli architecture is very open plan, with the kitchen, living room, and dining area all being one giant echoey space.
That is tough. In that case, you have to create a microenvironment. That is where those foam cubes or even just a well-placed pillow fort come in. If you can place a couple of thick pillows behind the phone and one on either side, you are creating a little dead zone for the sound. It won't be perfect, but it will significantly cut down on that slap back from the marble floors. You are essentially trying to stop the sound waves from ever reaching the walls.
Herman, you mentioned bit depth and sample rates earlier. For someone using an Android phone like the OnePlus, should they be worried about those settings, or is the default good enough?
For most people, the default 44.1 kHz is fine. But if you can, always record at 48 kHz and 24-bit. It gives you more headroom in post-processing. If you need to boost the volume later because you are talking quietly to avoid waking up a baby, having that 24-bit depth means you won't introduce as much digital hiss. It is like having a higher resolution photo. You can zoom in further before it gets pixelated.
That is a great technical tip. It is those little things that separate the amateurs from the pros. And speaking of pros, let's talk about the political and economic side of this gear. Most of this stuff, like Ulanzi, is coming out of very innovative manufacturing hubs in Shenzhen. But there is also a lot of great audio tech being developed right here in Israel and in the United States.
The American company Shure, which I mentioned, has been the backbone of the audio industry for decades. Their move into mobile-first gear with the MV series shows that they recognize where the world is going. And here in Israel, we have some incredible startups working on AI-driven noise cancellation that is being baked into the hardware itself. We are seeing microphones that use multiple capsules and onboard neural processors to strip away background noise in real time, before the signal even reaches the phone.
It feels like we are moving toward a world where the physical space matters less and less, because the technology can compensate for it. But we are not quite there yet. You still can't beat a good blanket and a directional mic.
Not yet. Maybe in 2030, but for now, physics still rules the day. You have to manage the air molecules. You have to be mindful of how sound moves through space.
I think we have given Daniel a lot to chew on here. To summarize for him and for our listeners, start with the room. Use the soft goods you already have, like blankets and pillows. If you are on a bed, you are already halfway there.
Right. And then invest in a decent USB-C microphone if you can. It bypasses the phone's internal limitations and gives you a much richer sound. Use a directional mic to ignore background noise like baby Ezra or the neighbor's dog. And please, get a dead cat if you are going to the park. Nobody likes the sound of wind clipping.
And don't be afraid to look a little weird. The best audio often comes from the strangest looking setups. If you were in a closet talking into a foam cube with a heavy book weighing down your stand, you are doing it right. You are a professional.
And Daniel, that Ulanzi TT88 is a keeper. Just make sure the base is stable. Maybe use a heavy book to keep it from wobbling if you are on a soft surface like a mattress.
I think this has been a really productive deep dive. It is a reminder that high-quality audio is about a series of small, smart choices, not just a big bank account. It is about understanding the relationship between your voice, the microphone, and the room.
Well said, Corn. It is about the workflow and the understanding of the medium. It is about respecting the listener's ears.
Before we wrap up, I want to remind everyone that if you are enjoying these deep dives into the weird and wonderful world of tech and prompts, we would really appreciate a review. We are coming up on our 1000th episode soon, and we want to reach as many people as possible.
Yeah, if you are listening on Spotify or your favorite podcast app, a quick rating or a few words really helps other people find the show. We have been doing this for 932 episodes, and it is the listeners that keep us going. Your feedback is our fuel.
It really is. You can find our full archive and a way to get in touch with us at myweirdprompts.com. We love hearing from you, and we might even use your question for a future episode. We have a whole section there on mobile gear recommendations that we keep updated.
Just like Daniel did. Thanks for the prompt, housemate. It was a good one. It forced us to think about the basics again, which is always healthy.
Right? That is it for today. This has been My Weird Prompts.
Thanks for listening. We will see you next time. Keep those recordings clean and those prompts weird.
Herman, I was thinking about that Ulanzi stand again. Do you think I could use it to hold my tablet while I'm reading in the sloth position? You know, when I'm lying flat on my back and I don't want to hold the screen up.
Corn, you are a sloth of many talents. I am sure you can find a way to make it work. It is a very sturdy stand. But let's save the tablet ergonomics for episode 933. I think we have talked enough about hardware for one day.
Fair enough. Until next time, everyone, I'm going to go see if I can mount my coffee cup to this stand.
Goodbye. Please don't spill coffee on the interface.
You know, I actually tried the closet thing once when I was visiting my parents in the States. I ended up falling asleep because it was so cozy with all the old winter coats. It was like a giant hug.
That is the most Corn thing I have ever heard. Did you at least get the recording done, or did you just record yourself dreaming?
I got about 5 minutes of very high-quality snoring. The AI was very confused. It tried to transcribe it as a series of low-frequency rhythmic chants.
I bet it was. Maybe we can release that as a bonus track. The Sloth Snore Sessions. It could be the next big thing in ambient sleep noise.
Don't give the listeners any ideas. They already think we are weird enough. We have a reputation to uphold, Herman.
Too late for that, brother. Too late for that. We passed the point of no return around episode 400.
Anyway, let's get some lunch. I think there is some fresh hummus in the fridge from that place on Jaffa Street.
Only if we can eat it in a room with good acoustics. I don't want to hear the slap back of your chewing bouncing off the marble. It is a very specific frequency that I find distressing.
Deal. We will eat in the closet. It is the only way to be sure.
Lead the way, Corn. I'll bring the pita.
One last thing, though. We should probably mention that for anyone using an iPhone 15 or 16, the advice is pretty much the same, just with a USB-C cable. The transition away from Lightning has made all this gear so much more universal.
Good point. The physics of sound doesn't care about your operating system. Whether you are Team Android or Team Apple, a marble floor is still your enemy and a blanket is still your friend.
All right, now I'm really hungry. Let's go.
I'm right behind you.
thanks again to Daniel for the prompt. It is always fun to talk shop about the gear we live with every day. It makes the technical feel personal.
It really does. It is about the tools we use to tell our stories.
And thanks to all of you for sticking with us. We know your time is valuable, and we are glad you spent it here with the Poppleberry brothers in Jerusalem.
See you in the next one.
Bye, everyone.
Signing off from Jerusalem.
Stay curious and keep those prompts coming. We are always listening.
And keep your audio clean. No more tin can recordings.
Always. All right, now for that hummus. I can practically taste the tahini.
I'm right behind you. I hope you didn't eat the last of the pickles.
I make no promises, Herman. I make no promises.
You are impossible.
I know. It's my best quality.
We'll see about that.
Indeed we will.
All right, for real this time. Goodbye.
Bye.
This episode was generated using Gemini Flash 3. Text-to-speech engine was Chatterbox.
Thanks for listening to our show, my weird prompts, where our thoughts go from slow takes to facts on cue. We change and follow through. My weird prompts, that's the flows from sloth